Hello everyone, and welcome to this new edition of the FIA Live Performance Webinar. I'm Camille. I hope you can see me. So these webinars are a series of online events designed to explore topics that are either specific to the live performance sector or broader issues, but viewed through the lens of the live performance. They reflect the Federation's strong commitment to supporting professionals in this field and addressing the unique challenges they face. These sessions also serve as a platform for unions representing live performance workers to connect, to share knowledge, and exchange best practices. The first edition of this webinar series took place during the COVID-19 pandemic and focused on the impact of the pandemic on live performance. And our most recent edition took place at the end of 2023, and it turned the spotlight on green production. Today, we'll be discussing the health, safety, and mental health of performers, which I think, seeing the many people in this virtual room, is a topic of great interest for many of you. Before we begin, I'd just like to share with you two important pieces of information. The first one is that interpretation is available in English and Spanish. So if you'd like to use these features, please just click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and select your preferred language. And the second information is that this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the FIA YouTube channel after the event. And now I'm very pleased to hand the floor to our brilliant moderator, Danny Conley. Danny is Director of Diversity and Inclusion at American Actors Equity, which is not an easy job in the current administration. So, Danny, over to you to maybe properly introduce yourself and guide us through today's topic.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you everyone for having me. I'm very excited. Again, welcome to the FIA panel on health, safety, and mental health. I'm really just truly so excited to hear more about the work that our four panelists and their organizations are doing to make live performance a safer and more holistic workplace. Before we jump into our presentations, I'd love for each panelist to introduce themselves. I'll go first, but I'll give the parameters first. If you could share your name, your union or organization, your title, and then answer the question, what are the most urgent health and safety concerns currently facing performers in live performance? So as I said, I'll start. I'm Danny Conley. As Camille said, I'm the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at U.S. Actors Equity. I've been in this position for almost 3 years, and I am enjoying every minute of it. It's a very exciting, though difficult time right now, but it is so worth it. To answer the question, from our standpoint, I think the most urgent health and safety concerns are, one, mental health support for workers on the job throughout the performance process, from auditions and interviews all the way through closing and afterwards. Also, solid disability accommodations so that our disabled workers are also taken into consideration when we're thinking about health and safety. And then also airborne communicable diseases and proper mechanical ventilation. That has been at the forefront of our concerns since the onset of the pandemic, and also as certain diseases reemerge in our country. So thank you so much for having me. And let's go in presentation order for the introductions, if that's okay. So Adam, why don't you go next?
Hello, hi everyone. My name's Adam Edniana. My role at Equity UK is Assistant General Secretary covering the Live Performance Department. That department incorporates theatre, stage, our variety and light entertainment members, and also a students team as well. In terms of challenges, I'll cover some of the different membership areas we have and the specific issues that face those areas, including voice damage, musculoskeletal injuries, and also mental health. But I think in terms of a wider challenge, there's still work for us to do in embedding health and safety into workplaces that are perhaps not under collective agreements, that exist in kind of a fringe and freelance space, that where health and safety can be an afterthought, where we need to make sure that it's at the forefront of any agreement or contract that people are working under. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam. Johan?
Hi, hello. Thank you for having me. My name is Johan Flock. I'm the Director of Operations at On the Move. On the Move is the international network dedicated to the circulation of artists and cultural workers. I'm very happy to join you today. For participants with visual impairment, I will very quickly describe myself. I'm a white man in my mid-40s. I'm wearing orange glasses, reading glasses. I have round graying hair and facial hair. I'm standing in front of have a background, white background with a big On the Move logo behind me. To answer your question around emergency and mental health, at On the Move, we see this issue intersecting with many other issues that are related to international mobility of artists and workers, especially the one connected to visa issues and all the pressures that comes with the lack of access to international opportunities, but also the overwhelming, stresses and panic that goes with intense mobility. So we are really working in these two areas and trying to unfold and unpack the stresses, potential solutions around mobility and parenting, mobility for artists and workers with disabilities, mobility for folks in the global south, etc., etc. So I will be talking more about this later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the reminder for the visual description. I am a Black woman. I wear black glasses. My hair is brown and up in a bun. I'm in a green sweater. And my background is a pink wall and a window outlined in an orange trim. Up next, Elina.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Elina Kuusikko, and I'm the General Secretary of Finnish Actors Union. I've been working in the union for 2 decades now. I'm blonde with black glasses and orange t-shirt. And in Finland, if I answer to the question, the main topic at the moment is the cultural budget cuts, which has caused 2 problems in mental health. Those 1/3 of our members have permanent jobs in theaters. And since the cuts, there are fewer freelancers. So those who work permanently, they have to work in more projects. So their problem is how to avoid burning to the end. And then 2/3 of our members are freelancers. And since the cuts, they don't have work. So their biggest problem is that they don't have any community. So we are trying to build up some support for them so that they don't feel alone. I think those are the biggest issues at the moment.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Arden.
Hello, everybody. My name is Arden Rishpan. My pronouns are she, her, and. I'm a white middle-aged woman. I've got long brown curly hair. I'm dressed in black, and my background today would be a bunch of cupboards as I'm in my office. I'm the executive director of Canadian Actors Equity Association, at least until next Friday, when I will be leaving my post for retirement. I would think that the 2 biggest issues of concern for our members at the moment, one on mental health, would be an increased level of generalized anxiety. An already precarious way of life has become even more precarious post-pandemic, and with all of the issues that are going on in the world around us, particularly here in Canada with respect to our neighbor to the south, We're seeing a lot of generalized anxiety in the workplace, which is manifesting itself in people not behaving very well towards each other. On a health and safety issue, we have had in Canada recently a number of very significant forest fires, and the air quality from those forest fires has impacted the major cities in this country very significantly, to the point where productions have had to be canceled. Even indoor productions have had to be canceled because the air quality is intolerable. So on an immediate basis, I would say those are the two issues affecting both mental health and physical safety in our jurisdiction.
Thank you, Arden. I just want to take a moment to thank all of our panelists for being here. Your work is important, it's essential, and it's proactive, which I think is one of the most important things. So I would love to introduce Adam as our first presenter. While Adam is pulling up the slides, I just want to start out with a question. So Equity has long addressed performers' mental health, notably through its 2022 scoping review. In your presentation, could you tell us more about that study and the work that followed?
Absolutely, thank you. I'll bring it up in a moment, the presentation itself, but the background to that study, the scoping review, is to get a sense of what literature and research existed already into the area that we wanted to focus on, specifically mental health within the performing arts sector, and to make sure that we had a good grounding of evidence for the policy and campaigning work that we do, the negotiating work we do, the updates of any agreements, and to make sure that we're moving away from purely anecdotal evidence to actually having some resource and research-based cases that we can bring forward. I think that's generally a challenge in the sector, of making sure that we can present a section of evidence in all these different spheres where we want to have influence, to show that we've had a deeper look into the issue. And we do need to show the initiative ourselves to do that, because as a sector, sometimes there's a tendency to just base the assessment on the end performance or the product, whereas actually there's a lot of background to the work that our members do that has previously been unrecognised. So I'll share my kind of PowerPoint now, if that's all right, Danny, and we'll go through that. And the scoping review will be the first part of that. There is also some reference you would have seen from the agenda to work that's been done by the Trades Union Congress into looking at kind of nighttime economy work and how that would have an impact on health and safety. And also I'll finish with some highlighting of the work that Equity does as a union and our connections and what we serve to members in this area as well. So I'll just bring this up. Okay. So again, thanks for taking the time to listen to what we have to say here. As I said, I'm looking at those three specific sections. The first one being the scoping review, and as I'd said, we're looking at a background of saying, where do we start from in terms of research and moving away from anecdotal evidence only, or kind of a culture of appreciating that there are issues but not actually having the key information we need to push that further. So the review was commissioned 2022. Some of the key findings were a general lack of research in mental health in the performing arts, and by that we mean a more specific knowledge of the issues, as opposed to maybe a sense of tolerance around what mental health is, and almost packaging into that some fairly informal disturbances that people experience. What we're looking for is something more specific, something more clinical, relating to what mental health actually is and how we can combat that as an industry. Most of the published literature within that area was focusing on music and other areas, but generally a lot of it was around musicians, which was quite interesting, to do with pressure that people were experiencing and performance anxiety, etc. There was less literature found to explore the factors related to mental health, specifically for freelance performance artists. And was there a failure to acknowledge the key issues for diversity in mental health? And this, I think, again, is part of the motivation to be looking into this area to say, how do we actually understand what our freelance workers are going through? Because they quite often have some casual touch points to an organization that can actually monitor their ongoing mental health. And they're kind of having some more casual relationships of a couple of weeks here, a couple of months here, and there's no real monitoring or kind of cause and effect study with that as well. So that was kind of the intention behind it. Looking at the factors
Adam,
relating
I'm
to
so sorry
mental.
to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Before you go on, so you might have other apps open
Okay.
and you're making like blobs on the slide, so you can't see the full slide.
Okay. Not quite sure how I. Hang on.
Do you want me to share it, Adam?
Yeah, could you? Is that all right?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Thank you, Camille.
Okay. There it is.
Thank you. Is that okay? Vision, mine's not still on there. Is that okay?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Camille. Thank you for bringing that up there. So, looking at factors related to mental health, these are some of the key findings that came out, and as you can see, there's some wording there related to those. Culture of unstable work, what people have mentioned before, antisocial working hours, financial anxiety and fears, as key causes of stress and mental health concern in performing artists. I think that was well understood, but again, you're trying to build a case around why this is a significant issue. A lack of industry regulation, working conditions, and mental health. As I kind of cited before in the initial question around the challenges, I think that is a key challenge around the regulation and the codification of these issues and how we deal with them, as opposed to having ad hoc solutions. Irregularity, unstable pay. We've all kind of mentioned that in terms of the precarity of work. And there was also a reference to the way we prepare graduates and people that are entering the industry, and giving them an insight into what the realities of work in that sector look like, but also are there different mechanisms or strategies people can use, and kind of making sure they're equipped to be out in that environment, in addition to changing the workplace itself. Again, we had some positive trends regarding access to and use of services, but again, the lack of cultural openness to mental health support was also discussed. So again, still a perception that one needs to soldier on to make sure they deliver on their performances or deliver on the work that they've been given, as opposed to taking time to address those issues. Thanks for that. Maybe I'll go to the next one. Thank you. The findings again of the scoping report, you can see what are some recommendations for the sector, addressing precarity of work, what kind of consistency can we get in terms of the work conditions, the contracts and the agreements that people are working under. Underrepresented individuals as well, cited that even though the initial cover is not great, it's even worse for people in those categories and those situations. How do we make that accessible to all individuals? And also those areas that are less researched. As we said, there was a concentration of research around kind of music and some of the drama areas. But again, we've got those kind of what we would term creative teams workers, designers, directors, comedians, voice artists, and variety, which I said I cover in our department as well, where again, they don't have that kind of volume of co-workers or any real economy of scale. They're sole traders and engaged on individual and precarious contracts. What we're looking at there is to say, well, we need to identify what support they need. And again, as we've said consistently, how do we improve access to mental health service? Now, I think our attitude is that's within this sector, but more generally in the community as well. But so it was good to get that kind of background. That was really important. So the purpose of that was to get that evidence base. And the next thing I would mention that we wanted to refer to was the Trades Union Congress Night Working Study in 2024. A lot of our members are working in the nighttime economy, and there is some crossover with people in different sectors. So this included areas such as hospitality, public transport workers, those working in kind of security or different areas of kind of trade in the evening and nighttime, especially in urban areas. So evidence of a shift between night work, evidence of a link between shift and night work to negative health outcomes. We're talking about sleeping patterns. We're talking about the kind of issues such as an onset of diabetes and links to cancer and mental health as well. Really good kind of background there to say, look, these are the things that are impacting the people that are working these, what you would generally term unsociable hours or non-conventional weekly hours runs for people that, again, hospitality is an example, where our workers that may be comedians are working in bars that have bar staff that are also having to get public transport at the same time and working late and interrupting their sleep patterns. So again, you can see issues, social life, kind of an impact on people's social life and their relationships as well, increasing kind of a vulnerability of their stable relationship statuses, but also putting themselves in situations that are challenging and potentially dangerous, access to late night transport and security as well, all contributing to kind of fatigue and that those issues that are faced by lone workers. The recommendations of that report, a focus on time off, making sure people get their rest breaks, avoiding late lone working, which is a challenge, but there are strategies that we can employ and kind of urge employers to embrace that allow for people to be moving away from their workplace at the end of a shift with others. How do we make sure we get workers' input into those decisions? Obviously, higher pay for night work, a kind of the award system or some kind of link in remuneration that sets that this is a more difficult, challenging environment for people to work in. And again, as I've said before, making sure we make it official and codified that people are doing adequate risk assessments and health monitoring. And again, these are things that can fall by the wayside when there is an attitude of it's a late night venue, we're open, everyone knows what to do, but no, we need to be firmer with making sure that there are adequate assessments and monitoring going on. Thank you. Great. The next section I wanted to cover was the work that we do as a union. But the example that I was asked to provide a bit more information on was what we call BAPAM, which is the British Association of Performing Arts Medicine. I won't read through all of that information, but you can see there a bit of background of what BAPAM is. Our link to it is where we're involved in a funding situation with them. It gives our members access to these services. And it's really important that we've found that members say this is a really valuable resource for them to have access to. There's a helpline. There's also a link to other arts and cultural organisations, including unions and different kind of charities as well. If we're looking strictly in terms of mental health, you can see there's kind of a process there by which people can contact, describe the condition that they're experiencing or any of the other kind of symptoms or concerns that they have. And there are qualified professionals then that you're referred to that are able to do some assessments and assist, but also some links to the NHS, which is kind of the National Health Service here in the UK, and any other organisations that can help you. And again, this is part of kind of plugging that gap that a lot of freelance workers have that aren't in regularised full-time employment with access to the services or benefits that maybe a human resources department would provide for a set of employees. We want to make sure that these freelance workers are still getting access to this and it comes through their union membership. So you can see there again a background of what the experience would be like for a person being referred through there. And there's also a really important part around the kind of discretion of that, a recognition that for a lot of people, it's there is some anxiety in even approaching BAPAM or equity around these issues. Want to make sure there's a compassionate, considerate approach to helping them get the assistance they need, whether it's therapy, whether it's more consultation sessions, or even just some general guidance and signposting. Thank you. I've included a bit of background here, some information from BAPAM itself. So this is a snapshot really of when actors have contacted BAPAM, what's been their presenting condition, what's the issue that is at the forefront of their inquiry. You can see there the kind of orange disc section of the pie chart. Mental health is the most expansive. You've then got other issues around whether it's people with voice issues, maybe they're doing musical theatre, or musculoskeletal, as we said, with the kind of manual labour and intensive work that exists within that theatre environment. So mental health, again, breaking further down of what that looks like. It might be not the easiest to read there, but you can see there's at the top of the list is anxiety, whether it's performance anxiety or to do with the kind of work environment and, as we said, the work structures that people are facing. And you can see some other issues there as well. So there's depression included. There's issues around relationships and some other things that are coming up, including kind of bullying and harassment, which can impact mental health as well. So all of these are things that I think we're familiar with as a sector. The question is, what do we need to do about it? What can we do as a union? I'll go to the next one. So as a response to that, I've listed our kind of equities mental health charter, which was developed after the scoping review with a bit of input from the kind of the research that we've had there and what are the issues and what can we do. You can see some of the key asks there of that charter. So we're looking for producers and engagers to address the harmful impacts of precarious work. Evidently, improvement of pay, improvement of work-life balance is an important campaign item for us, and we believe that's central to good mental health and healthy, safe workplaces. Relevant safeguards in the workplace. So again, are those risk assessments being done on a regularized, documented basis? It shouldn't be contingent on which manager or which staff member is involved in that day. We need to make sure it's a routine thing. And making sure that performers and creative workers' mental health is taken into account. We can see there again, addressing of historically marginalised groups and some of the particular circumstances and challenges that can exist for those people within the sector. Education providers, making sure that there is that kind of preparatory work done so that people going into the sector have an understanding of what they should expect in terms of dignity and respect in those workplaces, and also addressing the fact that young, inexperienced workers are often in more vulnerable positions and can be susceptible to some of the things that are impacting people's mental health, including bullying, harassment, performance anxiety, etc. And our last call was for the government, for regulators who invest in our mental health services, reversing that system of underfunding and making sure that the Mental Health Act is reviewed and updated to take into account these current circumstances as well. Thank you. I think that's the end of the slides, but you can see the background is, this is the research we've gathered. We've tried to show some initiative and go and get some more information. Our response in terms of what the members experience day to day as part of their membership and as part of the work they're doing, and our kind of aspirational calls to producers and to government to change the system for the better is kind of the package of what I've given you there.
Thank you. This is incredible. I am wondering, I know that we have to go on to the next presenter, but I am wondering if I can ask just 2 questions. The first is, how have members responded or gotten involved in this work?
Thank you. There's good uptake on mental health issues in local branch structures. It does come up quite a bit there, and there was an initial push back before this work was done to say, look, we need to make sure we're addressing this and leading the way as a union. And even if you look at the kind of casework we do on behalf of members in their workplaces, a lot of it is interconnected with mental health issues, more than other health and safety issues, certainly mental health issues. So there is a push locally, but also the support for BAPAM. I think the member response to BAPAM, even just again for me anecdotally, if I go out to a production and say, this is part of your membership, this is one of the services that you're entitled to have access to, it really is a significant bit of key information for people that aren't familiar with those structures of if you were in full-time employment and where you would go. So I think that's a really important safety net for us. But there's generally big support for us to push for changes in regulation and to make employers accountable for doing the things that need to be done to regularize these assessments.
Thank you. And then the other question is, how does this work manifest in your contracts and negotiations?
So within contracts, as I said, I think there is at our larger scale collective agreements, there is a recognition that these services exist, and part of our key kind of campaigning and negotiating asks is around that idea of whether it's work-life balance or a better deal for members across the whole piece of work, and this forms part of it. But also, I suppose, non-mental health, but still health and safety. We have a theatre safety committee, for example, that pulls in those collective agreements where we're able to put forward issues specifically around manual handling or the kind of apparatus and equipment that's being used, all of those issues as well. So I think that gives us a good codified structure to bring up those issues within the agreement structure itself.
Thank you. And it also points to how interconnected all of these issues are. Thank you so much, Adam. Really appreciate it. I would love to introduce Johan as our next presenter. On the Move's mission is to support the international mobility of artists, from funding resources to finding advice. How has your organization approached the issue of mental health in this context?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Also, thank you, Adam, for your presentation, because I think many things that I will talk about actually echo or resonate with the presentation you just made. On the move, as you said, and maybe I will share my screen. And on the move, no, not my screen. I will share my presentation. Makes more sense. On the Move is really a network of organizations that are located across the world. Most of our members are based in Europe, but we have members in America, Asia, Southeast Asia, Northern Africa. And our purpose is really to work towards a good circulation and mobility of artists across the world. So when we look at all the issues connected to mental health and well-being, we are trying to analyze all the factors that are actually playing a role into the professional trajectory of artists and culture workers. Of course, because of the ecosystems we navigate, I would say our main focus is the independent scene or the independent cultural workers. As we understand, they are a more vulnerable segment of our ecosystem. So the On the Move members have a very particular profile. Some of them are arts councils, ministries of cultures, and all these national bodies and agencies in charge of public policies. Some of our members are grassroots organizations really dedicated to one aspect of the international mobility, be it, residency centers for artists, be it mobility info points. So we have a wide range of operators and organizations that are part of our network, but all of them have this ambition to really try to champion or to support the arts and culture at an international level. Usually we are very famous because of the activities we do on our website. The artistic community loves us because we circulate a lot of open calls for participation. So basically, if an artist is looking for, a residency in Chile or to present their work in Japan, I mean, they come to our website and they will probably have an open call with, opportunities to work, to grow, to learn, to network, etc. And we are also very famous for our funding guides because everybody is looking for money. So at some point, artists, workers, their organizations are using a lot the mobility funding guides we put together. They are, country-based. So you have one for France and the UK and Spain, etc. But you have also a lot on regions of the world, and we try to update as much as possible all these funding opportunities so people can easily or more easily find money. So this is the, what we are famous for. But indeed, as you were saying, we are also working more on analyzing all the mobility or international circulation trends and all the issues that we feel are very important to bring forward, not only to the artistic community and to the culture field at large, but also to the policymakers and all the decision makers that, in a way, either support the arts or imagine and create rules and regulations in which we, in a way, navigate. And recently, these past 3 years, we've been very active to focus on key areas that intersect with well-being, mental health of in our community. So we focused on, we did a research on mental health and well-being, but we also researched disability, so artists with disabilities and how for them the international mobility was, a challenge. The same for parenting or caregivers. So we use the many publication that I mean, I use today the many findings in a way that we carried away, but also we quote, and I'm very happy to say that probably we quoted in the past some of the work you guys there. In terms of studies and guidelines, we try to also quote recent initiatives, barometers, toolkits that professional organization can put out there. And if I just focus only on well-being and mental health, we try to focus only on this international circulation aspect because we trust you and many other national organizations to actually carry out studies for your constituents or your members and to make sure I would say at least at national level, you come with very strong recommendations based on the studies of your membership. For us, we try to focus really on this international dimension. So we could identify some stressors that are obvious in a way, but it was very, very good to analyze, to interview artists, to check to have the feedback of many stakeholders to make sure we were on the right track in order to also make recommendation at European and international level. So what we observe is gonna echo or resonate very much with what Adam already pointed out. In terms of the unequal access to regular funding, so all the precarity that we observe in our field, but also a lot of administrative tax issues that are inherent to also the international trajectories of artists and cultural workers. All the excess cost, that is also a big stressor. How do we collectively put into place mechanism to support parents, caregivers, artists with disabilities, among others? The fast pace of artistic creation of all the project-based approach, so the ecosystem being conducive to a lot of overproduction and being constantly looking at reaching out opportunities outside our own country and trying to produce work and tool work internationally to sustain economically. And then we have quite particular stresses in relation to vulnerable communities, artists in exile or artists that are at risk. We saw also new stresses that were probably, I mean, understudied before, the stresses related to climate change and the necessity to adopt more environmental sustainable pathways, and the digital borders. That is something also that came up quite recently, probably, you know, because of the pandemic and the shift in our digital practices. But we observe quite the similar borders or inequities online that we could observe offline in the real life. So many of these stresses are really connected to either hypermobility, the idea that the artist needs to be mobile to sustain, they don't have a choice. And I would say the large majority of artists and cultural workers don't have a choice. And at the same time, all the stresses connected to the restrictions around mobility, so the lack of access to mobility. And if you're based, as we all know, in certain countries or parts of the world, it is an enormous amount of work to just be able to get out of your country. And we have, I would say, I will discuss a little bit further about these visa processes, but also the at-risk and displaced artist aspect of our research. I just want to give you a couple of issues related to parenting and caregiving, because I guess it resonates also with some of the elements that we will probably discuss later on. We saw that in terms of issues that are burning for young parents, or parents that are embracing or needs to embrace an international trajectory, we had a lot of pressure around, I mean, the expectations, the mother should stay, not the father, etc., all the things we know. Also, industry assumptions. We observed quite a lot of employers or, host venues, festivals that expect parents to show up at very weird times and to be available night and day, etc. We saw the issue of losing the international experience and exposure as a big risk, and especially as we know the international dimension is very important in ensuring an income for many independent artists. So it is a critical point. And you know this even better than me, the rules and regulations in Europe and outside of Europe are very different. So from country to country, and sometimes even from province to province, the legal framework and the support that artists can count on is very, very, very different. So I will go. I mean, I will. I'm aware of the times. I will pass this, but I will post in the chat links towards these research. So I'm very happy to answer your questions and continue conversation later on. I just wanted to have a mini focus on the visa process, because this is something we tend to forget, being based in Europe and operating within this particular part of the world, but also in parts of the world where we enjoy a very strong passport, let's put it this way. We see and we studied also this, the reality of artists and cultural workers being based in other parts of the world, and the hassle that going through the visa process and trying to actually access these international spheres that we feel we need to access in order to make a living. And I've just put here a small drawing with the keywords that respondents of an online survey highlighted to describe their process. And as you can see, anxiety, expensive, stressful, etc., etc. You have quite a lot of strong words to describe this process. I will maybe just finish with let's say, a more positive note. When we talk about mental health and well-being, we are, and I'm sure you are dealing with this almost every day, we are asking ourselves who should care. And across all these studies and all these reports, what comes out is it's really a collective effort. It's a societal effort. So it's not just the employers, it's also co-workers, artists. It's not just the persons that have a dedicated strong background in these issues, but it's also people that don't know much about health and well-being that will intervene sometimes. The policymakers, the decision makers, the funders, the one giving money also have the key role to put into place or suggest approaches and mechanisms. And we observed really recently that some funders providing travel grants were mindful enough to include features in relation to a broader sense of well-being, meaning, yes, I will fund also the people traveling with you because you are an artist with disabilities and you need to have people with you. Yes, I will fund your partner or your caregiver to come with you because you have a child and we need to factor this in whatever opportunity we offer you. So more and more, we also see that there is an awareness of all the factors, issues and stresses that come to complicate the professional pathway of an artist. So it's a positive observation. I hope I hope we can multiply this positive observation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johan. I love that it's ending on a positive note. This is something that has been brought up a lot in our spaces is around disability and parents and caregivers. And so it was really wonderful to hear more about the work that you're doing around that. I did have a question before we go on to our next panelist. You mentioned building within and around an ecosystem. So I'm wondering, is there support or resources for folks throughout the performance process? Or is On the Move in a position to recommend or connect folks to organizations who can help throughout the performance process?
Actually, we are connecting a lot, and that's why these guides and also this mobility funding guide that are really mapping all the funders that are interested in supporting, international projects. It is quite key for us to try as much as possible to connect the players, the artists and all the workers and their organizations to funders. And I would say our role is this one, to circulate information. So we are not providing money ourselves, but we are very happy to circulate knowledge and information and very often also contacts. So contact us. Don't be shy.
Wonderful, thank you. And Dominique put the link in the chat for On the Move, so please, I encourage you to head over and view it after this session. Wonderful, thank you so much, Johan. I would love to introduce Elina as our next presenter. So your union collaborated with employers to develop a Finnish OIRA tool, which led to a second initiative focused on mental health. I would love if you could talk us through both projects and their impact.
Thank you for having me. I think my job is to introduce you the OIRA tool. I use that word because FIA has been involved in the OIRA tool in the beginning. So I will start my slideshow and explain you how much just a moment, how much the basic physical safety in the working place affects on the mental health, and also how important is the culture of intervention in the working place. And now I'll start with explaining you that Finland is a very small country, but we are a theater country. Most of our members, they work in theaters, either in in long-term contracts or short-term contracts. Like we are 5.5 million people in Finland, but the tickets sold in theaters has been about 3 million before the COVID, and now it's a little bit less. But still, as you can understand, we are a theater country, and that's why you could think that all the safety issues are well organized, but it's not the case. I'm here to tell you about the OIRA tool, which is a European risk assessment tool. FIA with other performing arts unions, together with Pearl, which is employers organization, created 2 tools in live performances. One is for venues and the other one is for productions. And it was published 2016. And it is supposed to be translated into your own country's language and also the system of your country and the legislation of your country, so that you can have the most use of it in your working places. So we decided to do that. So together with the Theatre and Media Workers Union and our theatre employers organization, we contacted the Finnish Institute of Occupational Health, because at that moment we knew that there was one tool translated, which was a transportation tool. And we got funding from the Finnish Work Environment Fund. So the project grew up very much. We started with 3 unions, but then afterwards we had all the universities and all the different kind of institutes together with us, and also the musicians were involved, and opera, and everyone. It was a big cooperation together with the field and then the Finnish Institute of Occupational Health. So we had 9 researchers, and the project was like 3 years, but the funding took 1 year in the beginning. So it was a big research project. And as I said, we were just about to translate the OIRA tool, but what we got 2 research projects, well funded. And the first paper was Floor is Yours. This is the OIRA tool project and research of that. So the findings didn't surprise us. We all knew that, the safety in performing arts, it needed to be systematically improved, and so we got evidence in this research. And then they found out the safety culture in the performing arts is lacking. And just a minute now, I have to take the safety. The findings were that the safety culture is inconsistent, which means that everyone is appreciated, or the safety is appreciated, and then everyone believed that everyone is interested in occupational safety and well-being, and then like everyone thought they want to take care of their safety and the other's safety. Just a minute. There's a little problem. On the other hand, the research showed that the occupational issues, health issues, are not taken seriously enough, and the safety has to be compromised from time to time, especially because of the timetable of the work and the pressure of the work, and then the shortcomings are not addressed. And then also in the arts, like the inappropriate treatment has to be tolerated, because there are always the artistic heroes, and the others has to kind of tolerate that. And then it's not clarified who is responsible for the occupational safety. And then this was the main discussion, or the biggest discussion throughout the project, that particular attention should be paid to the management and the psychosocial strain. So this was the whole time the main issue. Just a minute. And then the main resources of the work, as you all know, is the colleagues and the workplace atmosphere, and the content of the work and success at the work. I go this quite quickly, that because you all know this is, I think, in every country. So the grievances in the work's safety and well-being at work are tolerated in the field. So the culture of intervention has to be improved. Because and then we also got the OIRA tool translated into Finnish system beside the research project. The OIRA tool has different kind of these slides, so that there's performing and there's preparing for the perform. You can see that you can find the OIRA tool and read it in English. So I didn't take them up here, but then the last slide here shows that there is part of well-being as well, and mental health, but it's very small part. And then we got different kind of different kind of tools for different other things than only the OIRA tool. There's this one is good behavior in the work, and then there are different kind of tools for the risks and stuff like that in well-being and in behavior and management. But this was the first project. But the researchers, they were so involved in this that they wanted to have another project, because they wanted to kind of help to improve the culture of intervention. So we had done another other project, again with the Finnish Occupational Health Institute, and it was funded, and they found the funding. So what we found out are the problems in the intervention, and this was the most important project, because we had the paper of the problems, and in this project they went to working places and talked to people. They came to all our union meetings and explained the problems that are in the field. So people really got involved with the matters, and the results in this as well was didn't surprise us. So there's always a different kind of issues why people don't dare to intervene in the working place. Hierarchy, and then concern for personal reputation, and always, the timetable of the project, and it's more important to get the project done than to stop it because of the health issues, and this needs to be improved. So the climate of discussions should be changed, and the leadership competence should be developed, and these were the main findings. But then maybe the most important thing was the how they came to the working places and explained to people. And most of the, like, I heard many times actors in these situations saying that we can speak up when there's a problem, but then after a while they realize that, okay, there's always this, we discuss it later, we go through the matter, and then we discuss it too late, not at the moment. But then the finding was also that there is a possible better future. But the main thing that I want to explain from this project maybe is that these were very well funded and organized projects, but the results were as expected. But what we definitely like the most is that performing arts is now considered a proper industry, and it's in the official map of occupational health. So we didn't exist beforehand. So now it's easier to contact the Occupational Health Institute and get project from there. And I know other unions have already kind of gone further. But what is problematic with this kind of project when it's a project led by an institute, even though everyone is involved, it doesn't land into the field that well. So Aura is not yet very widely used. It's known, but not used. So there's still work to be done to improve the culture of intervention. Maybe one part of the problem is that we had COVID time between, but there was also a good positive thing during the COVID time because we had the project going on. So we had 2 big seminars or webinars for actors going back to work, because it was a huge question, at least in Finland, when you didn't work in front of the audience and you had to go back. People had a lot of kind of questions in that. So there was this, and also some people, like freelancers, they didn't have any job. So, you know, coming back to the community and starting work again. So this project was partly in a bad time and partly in a good time. But what we should have now, the next project should be like the one Adam showed us, and maybe we all get inspiration from that. So my part was kind of to present back to basics and show how important it is to have a good culture of intervention in the basic stuff like physical safety.
Thank you. This platform and these findings sound incredibly useful. I am encouraging everyone to look at the link that Dominique sent and see how it can be helpful in your own organizations with the performers that you work with as well. I did have one question. Earlier on, you mentioned that occupational safety wasn't taken seriously or seriously enough. And I'm sure most of us are familiar with the mentality that the show must go on. I'm wondering, based on the findings, and I saw a little bit about this on a couple slides ago, how do we encourage employers and management to combat that in their work with performers, especially since issues like hierarchies may prohibit performers from speaking up? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm a lawyer, so I know how to say that there is this criminal thing. You know, you're responsible for the safety of the working place. Still, I think this project was good, like Adam's slides. When you have a researchers, you have someone else showing that there is a problem. So you just have to show the problem, explain it, and then try to get them involved. It's very difficult. But I think one thing is to have this collective responsibility. So we have to make our actors to be responsible as well, so that we have to encourage them to take to make interventions when something is wrong. But it's very difficult. But yeah, it's always lack of time and resources and whatever. Difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And educating and empowering folks to speak up when things are going wrong in their workplace. It's hard and it's scary, and it's important to know that organizations like ours exist to be there for them. Thank you so much. I would love to introduce Arden as our next presenter. CAEA has tackled performers' health, safety, and mental health through various initiatives. I would say a highlight of that is the work around intimacy. I would love if you could share more about the work around intimacy direction, and then any other recent mental health and well-being initiatives like the Mental Health and Wellbeing Survey would be wonderful.
Great. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say that I'm speaking to you today from Toronto, which for thousands of years has been the traditional land for the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit. This meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and as always, we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on this land. In Canada, we in the arts and culture sector, before performances in public venues, there's always a land acknowledgement. And in many organizations such as ours, before we start any important meeting or gathering, we make a land acknowledgement as well. And we do it particularly here in Equity. Canada is engaged in a very complex process of reconciliation with our Indigenous people. And we do this as a regular reminder of the role that we have to play in our sector, in our work, in that reconciliation. So I'm going to talk to you about two different things. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about intimacy direction, and then I've got a few slides that I want to show you that are some excerpts from our mental health and wellness survey. As the co-chair of the subcommittee on sexual harassment here at FIA, a few years ago, we had a panel where we discussed intimacy direction. And here in Equity, we've been very fortunate. We've had conditions around intimacy direction in our collective agreements for a number of years now. We have been able, slowly but surely over a period of time, working with our producers in theater, dance, and opera, to embed language around the importance of intimacy direction into all of our agreements. The FIA Secretariat will be releasing sometime this year a guide to intimacy professionals, which will be made available to all of the FIA affiliates. It came out as a result of two surveys that we undertook. The first one was with the FIA affiliates themselves to ask about whether intimacy professionals were being used in their jurisdiction, how they were being used, how people understood their function to be, whether or not there were established terms and conditions for their engagement, and whether or not any of the unions had admitted them to membership. Once we did that first survey, then we reached out internationally to a number of intimacy directors around the world to ask them very specific questions about their work, how they did it, what was important to them in their work, the kind of training that they felt was essential in order to be accredited or treated as an intimacy professional. And this work has been put together. As I said, a guide will be coming out later on this year, and I am absolutely confident that it will be very welcomed by many of the affiliates around the world who are interested in this kind of work, but in many cases may not know where to start, may not know what appropriate training would be for their intimacy professionals, and are looking for some tools to help them ensure that they get embedded into their workplaces. We talk about intimacy professionals, and we talk very much about their work in a very practical way, how they help choreograph the actual scene, how they may speak with the wardrobe people on behalf of the performers, how they talk to the performers about consent when they're choreographing the scene, and how it is that they can speak with the producers in order to ensure that what's been agreed upon has been put down on paper in a rider to the contracts. And all of those, of course, are extremely important aspects of the job. There are other aspects of their job which really focus on the mental health aspects of the work. It's obviously of great comfort to artists to know that these scenes are all being managed in an extremely professional way, in a standard way. They know what they can expect when they have an intimacy professional on the set. They know what the processes are if they've worked with them more than once. And I think that eases up everybody's comfort level in actually doing the scenes. What we don't talk about all the time, and the role of a good intimacy professional, is really the psychological support that they can provide. There are two situations that came up before we started to do this work, which prompted me to want to do it. One came from a ballet dancer who performed a role in a ballet where there was a simulated rape scene. And she had danced that role on a number of occasions in previous productions and had had no problems with it. And then one day, she did have a problem with it. And she didn't know why she had a problem with it. She didn't understand where that came from. And she most certainly didn't have the tools in the moment, in the workplace, to manage what had come up for her. And she found that really distressing. Of course, the pedagogy around intimacy professionals also includes practices to disengage from the work, to understand the psychology of what is happening to you. And so it struck me that, in dance as well, not just theater, this was really important. And then I heard from another member, a male artist this time, who was playing a rapist in a very unpleasant piece of work, which had to do with a very ugly time in Canada's history, where Indigenous children were treated unbelievably badly. And he found it very, very difficult. And we forget sometimes, often it's the women who are going naked or who are appearing certain scenes. We forget sometimes the psychological impact on an actor, a lovely, wonderful, marvelous man who is a good father to his children, as it turns out, who has to play this ugly rapist 8 shows a week with people who he knows and trusts. And this is sometimes the area of intimacy professionals that we forget when we look at all the very practical issues. But a good one is well trained in recognition of trauma, in mental health first aid, and is able to provide artists with a really essential support system to help them manage the material, to help them disengage at the end of the day. As one of them said to me, the body doesn't know the difference. Touch is touch. It doesn't know that it's not real, that you're acting. And so the way in which physical activity takes place can sometimes be difficult to manage, can sometimes be confusing. And so the mental health aspects of intimacy professionals, I don't think can be underestimated, particularly when we're dealing with challenging work that forces us to look at difficult situations, or where the rape, violent sexual encounters, all of those kinds of things are subjects that we need to confront on the stages, whether it is in theater, dance, and opera. And so I hope when the FIA Guide to Intimacy Professionals comes out later on this year, that all of you listening today and all of our colleagues around the world in the FIA family will find the work that's been done helpful to them, because I believe it provides a terrific service to our members. Now I want to just put up a few slides about our, sorry, hang on a second. Let me go back. Why is it giving me a hard time here? Oh, Kemi, can you find them? I'm not, for some reason.
Sure,
Unless
I will
you
share
are-
it.
Oh, no, there it is. I
Okay.
think finally it's behaving. No, I'm getting the PDF. I'm sorry. Would you
I'll
mind?
do it.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to something that Adam said about getting beyond anecdotal information on issues in the workplace and the importance of being able to deliver actual statistical information on any of the issues that we're dealing with. We can go to the first slide, please. Equity has done quite a number of surveys of our members in a variety of different areas over the years. We did a very early one on sexual harassment and harassment in the workplace. This one we did just before the pandemic. We were aware that our members had expressed concerns around mental health issues, and so we reached out to them. This first slide just gives you an idea of how many people responded and the areas in which we asked them to give us demographic information so that we were able to parse out their responses so that we could find out whether there were differences in responses by age or by gender or sexual orientation. And we find being able to ask our members that information in that way extremely useful. We can move on to the next slide, please. We talked to our members about their overall mental health, and we then began to look at it by discipline. You'll see here down in the bottom left-hand side, our stage managers who we represent talked about their mental health as either being fair or poor as opposed to good, at a higher percentage than any of our other members who were actors, singers, dancers, or directors, choreographers, fight directors, or intimacy directors. And while a certain percentage of the members, little over 50%, indicated that their mental health was in good shape, a large percentage of them said it was not. And that was our first clue that maybe there was something happening here, particularly when we looked at the stage manager's response. You can have the next slide, please. Then, of course, we asked them how their mental health issues were affecting them and if they could describe them for us. And you can see on this chart that, of course, the largest response was general anxiety. After that was low self-esteem. And you can see we go all the way down: self-criticism, obsessive thoughts, stage fright, paranoia. And it doesn't come as a surprise to anybody. Adam's work showed the same thing, that general anxiety seemed to be the highest level of concern for the members. If we could have the next slide, please. And again, no surprise, what was the source of that anxiety? The general insecurity of the work, the stress in life, all of that contributes to a discomfort, a general discomfort amongst our members. Now, I don't know what the percentage of average citizens in anybody's country would be if they were asked the same questions. What percentage of them would necessarily respond in the same way? But my guess is that the job insecurity and the precarity of our work necessarily leads to a higher level of precarity in their mental health states as well. We could see the next slide, please. We asked how it has affected family relationships. And of course, we see a lot of people responding that it has had a big effect. And interestingly here, the largest response was from people under the age of 36. And so we see a very different demographic responding with respect to work-life balance. Younger generations are, I think, looking for a different work-life balance in their lives than maybe somebody of my generation looked for or put up with. And so seeing these kinds of numbers makes us aware of how it is that we're going to have to look at our collective bargaining in order to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our members as the demographics change. We can look at the next one, please. People are on the road. This is something else that Adam mentioned. And of course, this is all about Johan's work. What does traveling and being on the road and being away from your family do? And this was one of the biggest influences in people's struggles with their mental health. And again, I point out that the people who responded with the largest percentage in this area were both stage managers and people under the age of 36. So at this point in the survey, as we're going through it, we're starting to see some real patterns evolve in terms of who is struggling and why they're struggling. If we could see the next slide. Then we got pretty detailed, how often has this happened to you in the last 6 months? And here's some statistics. We looked at it in some slightly different ways. And another alarming statistic came up. When we talked about experience of depression in the last 6 months, 94% of our members who identify as trans or non-binary indicated that they had had some kind of a depressive episode in the last 6 months. And again, that's a clue to us that we need to look carefully at what's happening in our workplace. If we could see the next slide, please. Of course, there's always weight and body shape. Body image is a huge issue in our business. And I would have thought that the dancers who responded to this survey would have had the highest percentage of people commenting on how a negative body shape affected their self-image. But again, it was our stage managers. And so now we really begin to see that we have a really big structural problem in the sector with how our stage managers are treated, how they feel about themselves, and how it is that they're managing in the workplace. Okay, have the next slide, please. We talked to them about how methods to use to control their weight. I don't think any of this comes as any surprise to anyone, except that the idea of fasting or restricting their food intake by singers seem to be one of those stats that comes out of, that was unexpected. One of the best things about doing surveys like this is some of the things you think are true actually turn out to not be true when you go and you ask your members to report. I would never have imagined that singers would have been the ones who would reported fasting or restricting food intake to control their body shape the most. And then the next slide, of course, we talk about those non-industry stressors because they contribute to all of the issues that we're facing and that people are facing in the workplace. I don't think there's any surprise here in general that money, of course, is right at the top of the list. We know that it is, precarious, and we know how that affects it, but there's a significant number of other non-industry stressors that have an impact on us. And then we look to see whether or not there are ways in which we can improve the work that we do in our collective agreements in order to try and address some of these non-industry stressors. I think there might be one more slide. I'm not sure. Yes, so here it is by discipline. The yellow cells are those who had a significantly higher value in these areas. And again, you look at all the yellow in the column for stage managers. Insufficient resources, fatigue, much higher than other people, time pressures, being asked to do things they were not trained or qualified for, concerns about safety. This is all really useful information when you go into bargaining. And it gave us tools to be able to go into our last round of bargaining with our biggest theater engagers and show them, bring numbers to them to support the changes that we wish to make specifically in terms of stage management working conditions. The next one, I think we talk about what they used in order to manage physical, emotional, or psychological effects of work. And we see, of course, the bulk of it is alcohol. Cannabis in Canada is legal, so that's not quite as shocking a number as it might seem in some other countries. And when you read the text below, it says stage managers were more likely to indicate they used alcohol or cannabis to protect themselves than any other group of members. Don't know if there's another one. Ah, there we go. There's our alcohol use. Oof. Over the age of 66, and our directors and choreographers seem to be the ones who are using alcohol on a daily basis. These are issues, of course, that may be generational, but it's certainly a concern in the workplace. Daily use of alcohol, if it happens in the workplace, of course, becomes a safety issue. And maybe there's one more or two more. We asked people what they tried to do to mitigate the stress. Again, not anything surprising here, but the things that show up, these are the kinds of things then we try to negotiate, if we possibly can, into our insurance plan, so that there is coverage for people to get either the massage or the vocal exercises, the counseling that they need. We have not been completely successful in that area because of the cost, but it has helped guide us in terms of building and rebuilding our top-up insurance plans. You can see the entire survey on our website. We can probably put this into the chat. And I just want to finish up by saying that, you know, Adam talked about the importance of statistical information when you are going either to lobby your government or to deal with the people who hire your members. And we have been quite successful in using surveys with our members. It's a way in which we engage our members in this work. It's the best way for us to find out actual information from them, other than just our own personal experience influencing what we think is happening. And since there are so many tools available now that are inexpensive and easily accessible, I would encourage my colleagues, although it takes a boatload of work in some cases to achieve, but the value of reaching out to your membership on these key issues and then being able to take that information with you in order to try and affect their working conditions is invaluable.
Thank you, Arden, and 100% agree. And the reverse of that, I encourage folks to reach out to their union for support. These can be really, as I said in the chat, these can be really heavy and intense topics. So if you need a breather, please feel free to take that. Something that I found really intriguing, Arden, was the graph on sources of stress. Something that we talk about at US Equity a lot is that a contract isn't just access to performing on stage, it's access to groceries, it's rent, it's healthcare. So it was really incredible to kind of get a more statistical analysis of what that looks like. I did, of course, have a question. I always do. So conversations have been happening around mental health coordinators on shows, in addition to intimacy direction, at least in the US context. Is this a conversation happening in Canada as well? Or what are your thoughts on a dedicated mental health coordinator for performing arts professionals?
It has, in fact, come up. It's come up in certain circumstances, and it's come up in bargaining, that we have had partners, bargaining partners, say to us, we understand the importance of an intimacy professional, but there might be circumstances where a different kind of support professional might be required in order to better achieve what it is that you're talking about. And in one recent agreement, we in fact expanded some of the conversation to include the possibility of bringing in mental health counselors or other kinds of support. We also talk about, because our agreements talk about cultural integrity in casting, we talk about the importance in some cases of having knowledge keepers or elders, or other people who are able to provide that kind of cultural identity support in the workplace if the work touches on difficult or challenging stories for them. I think probably that may be the next step beyond intimacy professionals, is getting our engagers to understand there are other forms of professionals we need to bring into our workplace. It's a great question, Danny.
Thank you so much, Arden. And it's always heartening to hear how these conversations are happening in a global context, because I think that we all can learn from and lean on one another. And I think that's kind of the heart of what FIA is. So thank you. Thanks so much to all of our panelists. This isn't just insightful work, it's proactive and responsive work. And for that, I know I'm grateful. I'd love to open up to a discussion. So I'll ask a couple of questions, and we'll ask our panelists to answer from theirs and their organization's perspectives. And then we'll leave about 10-15 minutes for open Q&A for attendees to ask questions that they are burning to ask. So you're welcome to ask questions in the chat option or use the raise hand function when we get to that section. Awesome. So kind of a big question, and this is more of a personal question, so please feel free to answer however you're comfortable. I know that being leaders of this kind of work can lead to burnout, can lead to your own levels of stress. I'm wondering how you might encourage leaders of your organizations or leaders in the industry to manage their own stress levels or their own potential burnout as they're doing this work. It's a big question, so please don't take a second if you need it.
Who wants to go first on that one? All right, I'll go first. It can be enormously stressful when you're dealing particularly with these kinds of issues, which are so personal to someone. They go beyond whether or not they're owed a little bit of overtime for some extra rehearsal. These are really deep, meaningful, important questions, and carrying the burden of responsibility for trying to improve the working conditions in these areas can be very stressful. It's a lot of energy going out. And so for me, I have to have other things in my life that replenish my energy. For me, I'm always studying something on the side. I have a particular interest in art history. I always have courses going. I did them all the way through the pandemic. It's really important for me to have something, even with as little time as one can have, to bring something positive back into my life. I work out regularly. I find that that is really helpful for stress as well. But I think for us and our own members, having some other positive thing that gives energy back to you helps balance it out, particularly when you're in these leadership conditions.
Maybe I can continue from that point, because this is very important question, especially for those like us, very small union with very few people working, and then a lot of stress to our president, who is working part-time, actually full-time in theater and part-time in the union. And I can see now how stressful it has been for our president, because we have been in lots of negotiations that are very tough. So it is very important issue, and we've been doing some improvements in that. So I think for the volunteer people, it's worse. It's hard to keep them because the work is so stressful and the steps forward are so slow. So that's an issue that we always have to kind of look after. But then, we who work full time, it's a bit different. It's hard to see how bad it is for the actors when we are working in the office, safe, and get monthly paid, and working hours are decent compared to the actors. even though those who work permanently, but especially for the freelancers at the moment when they don't have work. So I think for us, it's very hard at the moment also, but especially the volunteer, you know, the president, the board, and all the volunteer members who come and try to who are part of the negotiations and improving the things and planning the things and discussing about the things before we took them forward. And so especially for the small organizations.
I mean, in our daily activity, I would say we are, same as you, a very small team. So we need to rely on one another and to be able to exchange and discuss when we feel we need. Just to give you an example, working on mobility issues recently, recently, these past years, we've worked on Ukrainian artists being displaced, and the ability to continue to be artists in a full-scale invasion and war. But the same also when studying at-risk and displaced artists, and we did two reports since the beginning of the year. We go and interview or read a lot about the reality of artists that are suffering from wide range of external factors, pressure, censorship, conflict, threats, etc. So we are also dealing with very sensitive matters and human beings. So we need to be able to talk about this also internally, to also to have a board, and this is for me a quite important aspect, also to have board members and volunteer board members that are able also to come and support and talk to the team or be able to relay some information, but to step in when needed. And in our organization, but I also see that in many colleague EU international organization, the volunteer board members are always also quite happy to provide support, to put some distance to the daily work, and to put things in perspectives, and to remind also ourselves of the trajectory, our own trajectory as an organization, you know, our work plans, our ambitions over time, etc. So to try to mitigate in a way the risk that we face also as a worker self.
Thank you. And I appreciate touching on the kind of pressure that happens around volunteerism as well, compared to staff. I think it's a really important conversation to have. Not to ask for your trade secrets, but what's next? So we've heard about these incredible projects. I'm just kind of wondering what's next on your docket for things to address, either in your union or your organization.
That's a good question. We've just completed a number of rounds of negotiations. There are always things that we haven't been able to tackle, but the questions around other kinds of supports in the workplace, I think is likely to be one that comes up in the future for our members and one that we will be looking at carrying forward.
Maybe I'll continue. We are still negotiating some theatre contracts or the agreements, but still, I think the basic ground for mental health and is also always one's ability to affect one's work and working hours. And this is, you know, if you're an actor with permanent job, you don't choose your productions, and you still have to work 6 days a week and difficult hours. And then if you're a freelancer, you're trying to apply the works, and especially now when there's no work, so you can't pick up the works, you take what you get. So this is I think this is the main issue for us, get people to survive these next 2 years when we know that it's going to be hard, but also we have already plans to have negotiations with our employers side during the next 3 years that we have the collective agreement in power, that the thing we are going to discuss is the working hours and the working hour system, because that is the main issue for the permanent actors. They don't have enough resting time, and they work like 4 or 6 productions per year. So they burn out. And when there's a lack of or smaller resources, the theaters make them work more and more. So this is a very difficult issue, but we're going to try to do something to improve that during the next 3 years. But for the freelancers, it's the other way around. They don't have the work, so we have to have we're trying to support. Trying to make different kind of help for them, different kind of work for them, and have education, to have courses, to have events where they can meet each other. And we started living room system in our union. We have a practice room and we rent that, but we also will have some more activities in our office for them. So we have to try to support them throughout the next 2 years.
And if I can share a little bit on the move, I mean, you understood that we work on many topics, and we will continue until the end of the year. We will focus a lot on at-risk and displaced artists, etc. I think in terms of mental health and well-being, we have a focus really on the young and emerging artists. We are very aware that they have particular circumstances to navigate. A lot of stresses, a lot of factors that are very difficult to take in. So the mental health and well-being of the next generation of artists and cultural workers is very, very delicate. And we see that at European level, there is an understanding, and many governments are really trying to take care and focus more and more on this particular issue, which we welcome, of course. I would say that on the move, we will continue to work also on the very strong topic of the artistic freedom and the freedom of artistic expression. We see it's a very burning issues internationally, and this is also something we will advocate at international level at UNESCO, and try to continue advocating for the best conditions for artists at this level.
Thank you. I'm so excited to hear more as we move forward. And I would love to open the space to Q&A. So if any of our attendees would like to ask a question of our panelists, please use your raise hand function or post in the chat. I did used to be a teacher, and so I am very much of the camp of I'll wait. So if there's any questions.
I guess
Yeah.
you've all done a fabulous job about explaining what's going on in our organizations.
Alicia, and please let me know if I have mispronounced your name.
Hola, sí, perfecto. Voy a hablar en español. Gracias a todos y todas quienes han expuesto. Gracias, Arden, vieja amiga, que vamos a disfrutar durante poco tiempo. Creo que quisiera, no quiero ser conflictiva en este punto que está por, a ver, esperen un poquito que tengo, ahí está. Nada, porque cambia la traducción, entonces me aparecen en español y en inglés en el audio. Justamente que faltan solo unos minutos. Pero creo que a veces no tomamos en cuenta tal vez el sur, el tercer mundo, las realidades con las que nosotros estamos viviendo, conviviendo, donde los líderes, como decías tú, nosotros le llamamos dirigentes, tal vez hay un tema en la traducción, no percibimos muchísimos de nosotros ni siquiera sueldos por ser dirigentes sindicales, donde todo realmente pasa por la lucha sindical, eh, incluso la supervivencia durante lo que fueron la pandemia, ¿verdad? En este momento hay muchos países nuestros que están viviendo situaciones extremas, donde la cultura está siendo atacada sistemáticamente, donde nuestras organizaciones están siendo atacadas sistemáticamente y donde el estrés tal vez pase por llevar un plato de comida a la mesa. Ser pobre en Europa no es lo mismo que ser pobre en Sudamérica. Ser pobre y pasar una pandemia de como COVID no es lo mismo en Francia que en el sur de Brasil, por ejemplo. Por eso creo que a veces también tenemos que, cuando ponemos sobre la mesa este tipo de discusiones, también tomar en cuenta determinadas cosas. Tener discapacidades en nuestros países no es lo mismo que tenerlas en Europa. Nunca pongo ejemplos propios, pero voy a hacerlo. Yo estoy dirigiendo una ópera, ballet, con bailarines sobre silla de ruedas. En mi país, donde es uno de los países que más salas teatrales y tal vez teatro haya, y trabajo en vivo haya en per cápita, en nuestro continente, hay solo 2 salas accesibles para el público. De esas 2 salas, para los artistas, está ahí. Entonces, estoy hablando de accesibilidad simplemente, no estoy hablando de otro enorme problema. Entonces, creo que a veces tenemos que mirarnos tal vez en esa cooperación que nosotros le llamamos sur-sur, en esa cooperación, en ese trabajo que va entre los países más pobres, entre esos países que luchan de una forma desigual que, y que realmente hay veces que nuestros problemas de salud mental son terribles, terribles, y hemos sucedido y hemos pasado por cuestiones terribles, pero que tal vez no pasen por un stage manager, donde ni siquiera existe en la mitad o en el 90% de nuestros teatros, porque no hay dinero para sustentar un stage manager. Por lo tanto, tampoco pobres van a tener problemas de salud mental porque no existen, sino que existen sí nuestros actores, nuestras actrices, nuestros bailarines, nuestros músicos, nuestros cantantes, en situaciones donde hay circo, donde hay carnaval, donde hay otras formas culturales de expresión que no son las mismas que hay en el primer mundo. Sería interesante que en el futuro también pudiéramos obtener este tipo de puntos de vista. Agradezco a Arden también el reconocimiento a los pueblos originarios, que es algo que pocas veces también lo vemos. Y ojalá podamos contar con la encuesta Arden, porque me gustó mucho el formato. Muchas gracias y perdonen que diga esto al final.
No.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I want to recognize that there are different concerns for marginalized folks, especially in the global south or in poorer countries. I want to be cognizant that the experiences that our members are facing are going to differ depending on what their identities are. I see Elena's, can you correct me on your name? I don't want to get it wrong again. Hand up. So I want to go to her, if that's okay with you, Cami.
Thank you. It's Elena, but you can say Elena as well. I think that's that's fine. Thank you for Alicia for taking up that thing. I totally agree. I know we're in Europe, we are in different positions, but I can tell you that like I can relate to you in a little bit because all the issues that the bigger unions can take up, we are also looking at them like we could never do that. But about the OIRA tool, I know it has a lot of things that are too much for many groups, many productions, many venues, but still as a checklist for just a basic physical safety in the production, just to check that you have been thinking about everything. It doesn't cost anything. You can take it from the European page in English. If you go to the last page, then it's in English, and there are Spanish translations as well. Some countries has translated it into other languages as well. So you can find basic tools for physical safety, and then some well-being safety issues as well. Just a checklist, and it doesn't cost anything. I think, that's something that I think it's useful for, even though if you don't have money. In Finland, I think it is used mostly, the OIRA tool, in dance groups that don't have any money. So they have some list, to start with. They don't get paid. They just start because they love to do dance. They think they're gonna get financing later, but still, I think most of the groups that were in the process of the OIRA tool were dance groups. so and they have no money. So please try to use that as well.
Thank you. And Cami.
Thank you, Danny, and thank you to the speakers. I just have a question because several of you mentioned that young artists are particularly vulnerable to mental health problems, and I was wondering if your unions are visiting schools, and if when they are visiting schools, they are talking about mental health, if it's a subject that has the interest of students, because I think it starts in the school.
Yeah, Arden.
I do. I speak to theater students quite regularly, certainly all the theater schools here in Toronto and a number of them across the country. One of the things that I make a point of doing is I share with them a number of the surveys that we have done. We've done a census on our members to understand the demographic breakdown. Of course, we did a census a number of years ago on harassment in the workplace, which led to the creation of our Not in Our Space campaign, and I talked to them as well about the mental health and wellness survey that we did. And there are a lot of young people who respond very strongly to the issues of harassment and to the issues of mental health and wellness. I'm certainly seeing in a number of the theater schools a lot more young people who identify either as trans or non-binary. And we know that they face additional struggles out in the workplace and in the world, and that has they are often asking questions about mental health and what mental health supports they might be able to expect either from the union or from the industry when they come out into it. So I do think that the next generation has a different approach towards, so we've talked about the work-life balance and their mental health and how that's affected. We certainly are seeing it, as I said, in my experience in the theatre schools.
U.S. equity, just from our place, we have contracts with many universities. And so one of the biggest things that we've been focusing on is contract language that protects students. And then the other thing is we do presentations in schools, in theater arts classes. And for those of you in the US who want to request one for your classroom, you can find that on our public website. And I agree. I think that having conversations with younger folks who are even interested in joining the industry is an incredible way to shift the culture that we're looking for.
We don't have any special projects for the students. We meet all the theatre school students, maybe not once in a year, once in every other year when they study as a group. But then what I'm very concerned at the moment is those who studied before, or who ended up their studies just before the COVID, or during the COVID, or after the COVID, either during the time of studies, and then they came to the field when there was no job. So we are gonna make a study of and not maybe only the mental health, but take the temperature, how they feel at the field at the moment. Do they have jobs? Are they planning to go out from the field, and stuff like that? But that's something we're planning to do next autumn. We were supposed to do that a year ago, but we don't have the resources. So that's one of the big concerns in our union about the young.
Thank you. Okay, so we are a little past time. So I did want to say thank you to everyone who attended, and thank you especially to our panelists. I know that some of this is hard, intense work. So I am so grateful that everyone was able to take some time today to join us. We are going to close out, but I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day and an even better weekend.
I just want to say a big thank you to Danny and our speakers, Adam, Johan, and Lina. This was a great webinar, and thank you all, and have a great evening, day, whatever.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you. Good night from
Muchas
Finland.
gracias. Ciao.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.